This video is intended to show you some common loop algorithms from section 4.7 in our book. And the first ones I want to talk about are from 4.7.1, sum and average. I've already gone ahead and set up a little program here in Replit. I'm reading input from the user, a positive integer or -1 to quit, and I'm capturing that input and then I'm testing it as long as it's greater than or equal to 0. I'm just doing the same thing again, and I do that until they enter -1 just to set up some input. So let's run it real quick, and you see I enter some numbers, and then when I enter -1 it stops. The program is over. It is very common that you want to sum the values that the user enters, and perhaps that you want to average the values that the user enters. So we need two additional variables in which to do that. If you are averaging, you need both the sum of the total values and the count of the total values. How many are there? If I want to figure out an average quiz score, I have to know the sum of all the quiz scores and how many quizzes there were. So I'm going to create a variable called sum, and I'm going to initialize it to, whoopsies, not 9, but 0, because I want to start at 0. There's no sums yet. I'm also going to create a variable called count, and I'm going to initialize that to 0. So I've prompted the user to enter a positive integer or a -1 to quit. Remember these two statements up here. This represents the priming read, giving us an initial value. So when we get down here to our while loop, num will have some value in it in which we can test. So once we enter the loop, we know that num has a value in it that we want to account for. We want to add that. Sum plus equals num. We want to add that to our total, and we want to increment count plus plus. So as we loop through, sum and count will contain the total accumulation. A sum is called an accumulator, the total accumulation of values, and count will be the total count of values. After the loop is over, I can calculate the average. Average is typically a double, but what would happen if I divided sum by count? Both sum and count are ints, so the result would be an int which would truncate the decimal places. So we don't want to do that. We want to instead cast our denominator to a double, and that will be an int divided by a double, and the result will be a double. And then let's just output it. System.out.println the average is, and then concatenate that together with average. And let's run it. In an ideal world, we'd probably display the values of sum and count just to make sure they're adding up right, but let's take a look. If I enter, let's say 2, 3, 4, that makes 9, 5 makes 14. That seems like enough numbers to me. 14 divided by 3, let's see, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is 4 numbers. 14 divided by 4 is going to be about 3.5. Look at that, 3.5, because 3.5 times 4 makes 14, so my program works correctly. To recap, this is a common loop algorithm for calculating an average. It includes two important variables, the accumulator, which accumulates values, and then the counter, which counts the number of values there. So sum in this case is an accumulator, and count is a counter, counting the total number that are there. Finally, when calculating an average, if you've got a sum divided by a sum, you'll need to cast one of them to a double first. Notice, by the way, just real quick, I casted the denominator, makes it a little bit easier. If I had casted the numerator over here, that would be too late because the division has higher precedence than the cast, so it would do the division first and then the cast. So if you wanted to cast the numerator instead of the denominator, you would need to add an extra set of parentheses. I hope you found this helpful. Please watch the next video for more common loop algorithms.